Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Discerning Gamer. So I'm back from my holiday last week, which is great, and we're diving back in with a Steel Division replay cast. This is something a bit different than what I usually do. I've just gone into a replay here and casted it as if it were a live game going on in front of me. A lot of the time I either put in team chat of me with somebody else, or I chop it up and do a lot of commentary afterwards once I've had time to think about it. So it's just a skill that I'm trying to work on, and this was actually something that I did in preparation for the Code S Asia League match that I commentated, not last week but the week before. The VOD's on the Paradox Twitch channel if you want to check that out. It was Walther v Dnester. Now, I was actually looking at some of Dnester's games in the Code S Asia League leading up to that point, just to try and get a flavour for his style, and I came across this replay which was him versus Zagskrag, where he played some really interesting 91st LuftLande and was able to use elite infantry in a really interesting, cool way. So it won't be quite as polished as my usual type of commentary, however it will be a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more flavourful, and I think picking up this kind of skill of being able to commentate clearly what's going on the fly will really help the channel, and hopefully it's something that I can then do whilst I'm actually playing and kind of explain some of the tutorial concepts that I've made videos about over my own live gameplay and analyse my faults as I'm making them. Anyway, that's enough talk for now. Let's hop into the replay. Let me know what you guys think of this new format down in the comments below, and of course, if you're enjoying it, you'd like to see more, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Right, so let's look at initial opening plays for our good buddy Dnester. So he's playing as the 91st LuftLande, and let's have a look what we've got here. Kerbal. Can't see what's inside these guys. We've got Panzerschreck team, Recon team, Flamethrower, Recon infantry, leader infantry by the looks. 2 Recons, Panzerschreck, big bulk of infantry backed up by a Panzer 35R, one of the Beuter French tanks. And over here we've got for Zagskrag, the Guards, and he's got the Humber Mark III, M5 half-track, Stuart. In the half-track we've got, looks like leader unit and some regular rifles. Really heavily opening with the Stuarts here. So this is going to be very tough considering what Dnester's bought out early on. He's going to have to make some real plays with those Panzerschrecks, because you know those Stuarts and the Humbers can absolutely tear stuff up. I mean, I really don't think that the 4 AP on that Panzer 35 and its general low performance is going to do it any favours against these guys. So I guess because he's a little bit faster in these Opel Blitz trucks and his Kerbal wagons, he should probably be hitting the middle of the map closer. I think it would be too ballsy to try and go for these buildings there. However, if he can get across into the woodland there, that could be a good defensive position for him to initially hold on to. And you'll see he's actually got, as a result, you know, he hasn't got all these tanks and stuff. As a result, he has got a much wider position, so he's going to push the map heavily on his right. So we've got Ersatztruppen and Fallshcrimjager Führer to buff those guys up. Initial engagement here on the left, and I mean, this is a great engagement for him to take, because the 2 Fallschirmjäger are obviously the strongest units that he's got there. However, unfortunately, it looks like one of his Shreks has died and his Recon team have died, and so far it looks like we've taken 1 infantry casualty, but all of those tanks are absolutely fine, and the half-tracks are still up. So the anti-tank kind of nightmare that we were envisaging in the first place has actually taken place. But then again, in these close quarters here, you see the half-track just got absolutely smoked as soon as it crossed the bridge. So he can hold that bridge down. And these motorized rifles, although they are pretty hench, I can't see them necessarily pushing through the extremely veteran Fallshcrimjager on this side of the bridge. Though saying that, the Fallshcrimjager, it's the FG42 they've got here that's going to give a huge advantage to them. But again, he's just playing right with these Recce, spotting those guys and leveraging the Stuarts, because of course these guys have only got the Panzerfaust and the Panzerschrecks are dead. So let's see what he's reinforcing with here. We've got a anti-tank gun, very good choice, because you know there's some nice sight lines down this road that he could probably cover with that, and a further two Panzer Abwehr teams with the Panzerschreck, which should be dealing with those guys. And again, picking off these half tracks is good. You know, at least he's getting some sort of value out of the units that are going across there. And again, I think he might be able to snipe this infantry using the tree line for cover. Though saying that, those Fallschirmjägers definitely weren't happy with this tank push. And, you know, Zagskrag here is actually playing a really smart game where he's kind of, I think, realised that he had the overwhelming firepower here. He's suppressed and knew that those infantry had to be forced back, and so he's run off into the open, got as far away from the tree line that he knows is occupied, but he's about to be in for a real shock. And if you watch the tutorial video that I did on reconnaissance, you're going to see this is going to be a terrible situation for him, because these tanks have got no way in hell they're going to be able to spot this Panzerschreck. And unlucky there, actually, that it hit that Stuart, revealed itself, but didn't kill the Stewie. But with no infantry on this side here, the Panzerschreck's basically going to have free reign, because it will be pretty much undetectable by these Stuarts. And there you go, it has taken first blood on those Stuarts, and that's a really nice trade if you consider that is a 30-point Panzerschreck team taking out an 80-point Stuart, and he has also got a backup here. And of course, he, I believe, is benefiting from the Fallschirmjäger Führer there. Now, it's important. This is a very intense micro situation down here, but he's seen how thin on the ground his opponent is, and just mercilessly exploited that with the ace unit, Alexander Ulig, over here, just pushed right across the river and given himself a points advantage. When, you know, considering how heavy the investment from the Guards division here is, you know, they should not be, these Stuarts and their various, you know, decent mechanized infantry should be putting the Fallschirmjäger on the back foot here, but that's just not the case. He's managed to eke out some early points there and actually really, you know, put a complete stop. Another Stuart there getting picked off by the Panzer Abwehr team on the right there. And it's not a bad team, and they've got the Schreck 6 rounds, and there's 4 of them with MP40s, and so that makes them a pretty much a light a light kind of close combat anti-tank team. Right, got a ME-109 with the rockets coming in there. The Humber's a good target for it, because those high explosive rounds will deplete its health pool relatively efficiently, and also stress it out because it's less armoured than the Stewie. I think what Zagskrag's done here is actually over-invested in the armour. You know, really, the Stuart and the Humber alone would have been more than enough to give him a dominant situation on the armour front of things. And if he'd have swapped out that Stuart for another 2 squads of his motorised rifles, this would be a very different looking fight right now, because, you know, he would have been able to decisively push through this piece of forest with and also onto there, whereas he's really struggling. These the Stuarts, the Humber just got taken out by the Panzer 35. That's a really good bit of play there. And the Stuart, the Dingo, and the Humber were basically just paralysed in this bit of open ground, knowing that pretty much all around them the trees were full of elite German troops with nasty anti-tank weapons. And the Flammenwerfer teams here have just come in support of the Schreck. And this is really interesting, just using these really highly specialised infantry teams to bounce off each other, so that, you know, as long as you micro them properly together, they're going to deal with the critical threats to each other, as it were. So centre of the map, Zagskrag has, you know, gone from his strong footing in this town and managed to push across into these Ersatztruppen. They are, you know, they're not up to much, are they, in terms of the infantry fight? They are, as you can see here, disheartened, which means that without the presence of a leader unit, they are really going to suffer suppression and morale damage. They surrender easily. They're brittle troops. And he has correctly identified the situation and just pushed through there with his motorized rifles in the centre. And this Cromwell kind of sitting back. That's an early point dump that's not really buying him anything at the moment. Like, I mean, obviously he doesn't have all the knowledge that we have, but with the sake of hindsight, what does Dnester have that requires this 11 AP, 11 armor, you know, phase A giant to take down? Nothing. You know, a Stuart and a couple more infantry teams would have done the job for sure, or been more effective. So that's something, you know, just because the unit is very good, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the most efficient allocation of points. So finally a bit of pushback on this salient that Dnester's carved for himself. You know, some rifles and half-tracks coming in there to try and deal with Ulig. And I think he'll probably... It is a shame those Fallshcrimjagers were surrounded, but if they can fall back, Ulig should be able to deal with the infantry that's here. And of course on the right side, this just a very, very light push basically, where you know, it's literally just been like Ersatztruppen, the Shrek team, the Abwehr team, and look at this huge part of the map he's got for himself. And I think really it's just because he traded very efficiently there, put a hard stop on any attack that Zagskrag wanted to make across the river, and where he was wider on the ground with his lighter, cheaper infantry units, he just you know, very cleverly made good use of that advantage and pushed into the very light kind of thin spread of units that Zagskrag had over there. And these units, these are a real key unit, I think, for the LuftLande, these Fallschirmjäger Panzer Abwehr, because, as I say, they're a four-man team. You'll see the binocular also denotes that they're recon, so they've got very high optics. They, you know, are going to see any enemies before, as long as they're general infantry, before they have to engage with them. So they just become very good ambush infantry for taking out Stuarts, but also they've got that close combat punch that, you know, they're not a pushover like a regular anti-tank weapons team, and they give you the bonus of reconnaissance. So I'd say the microing use of these guys has been absolutely spectacular from Dnester so far. And again, you know, he's just shoring up this side where the points trade has just not at all gone in Zagskrag's favour. And now we're into phase B. We're going to see a little bit more of that, I suppose, early game advantage from all those light cars being sapped away as Dnester has time to kind of fill out his line, get more anti-tank guns in there, get access to some of his planes later on in the game, and also have just a chance to fill out his lines, really. Again, just really making hay while the sun shines with the Fallschirmjäger here. You know, because they are 3-star elite, and all of these, I mean, the G43, the FG42, they're all incredibly powerful infantry weapons, and the light infantry, which really the armoured push of Zagskrag relies on in this map, he's just neutered it and said, alright, fine, you've got no infantry now, run your armoured car and tanks through, I don't give a fuck, I've got a load of guys sitting in this hedgerow with Panzer Shreks and Panzer Faust, and they'll just, you know, open these tin cans up like it's going out of fashion. yeah, this is really nice kind of elite infantry commando play here that, you know, I haven't seen in a while. And again, just slowly pushing. I'd say the one thing here is the Spey troop, the Fallshcrimjager Spey troop here, are probably not being effectively used. If you look at what they can see, maybe it should be them pushing across the river first, or at least in tandem. Because again, Zagskrag here, because he's kind of struggling on points, he hasn't been trading efficiently. He is in kind of a bad spot for recon here. So having a bit of recon would allow the superior Luftwaffe presence here to make some hay while the sun shines and clear the way for this infantry push. Some assault pioneers coming in here. I can't help but feel just like an anti-tank gun around here. Just maybe even a cheap one, if he's got one available, wouldn't be too bad. Now, this is the HS-129. I'm a huge fan of this choice, because all these light armoured vehicles are just going to really suffer under its ability to loiter with the anti-tank cannon that it's got, the 16 AP anti-tank cannon. You'll see it'll just come out again and again and just pop tanks through the side armour, through the roof. And again, this salient's just been opened up really wide, and it's been, you know, there's a lot. If you look at sort of, I suppose, points here, 10 points for the Ersatztruppen, 45 for the Fallschirmjäger, 45 for the Panzerabwehr, 20 for the Flamethrower. So that's roughly like, what, 100 and, my maths is terrible, 120 points odd. Already, with these two, the Stuart and the Humber, Zagskrag spent more points than that there. And yet, because he's so reliant on these rifles to be able to clear this space, he can't do anything with those points that he's dumped over there. So definitely worth noting. The artillery he bought in the centre here, I don't know if it was the Sexton, but I did see some artillery going down over here that has kind of bloodied Dnester's nose and forced him off the middle. I do feel like Dnester, if he could just spare another Fallschirmjäger team or something, could definitely make some more gains in the middle there. Really nice use of the Messerschmitt there with the high explosive rockets just coming in, and unfortunately the Tempest was not there to deal with that whatsoever. And now he's having to fly over Dnester's side of the map to engage with the anti-air specialised ME-109. Look at this little French tank here. It's just gone on a bit of a tear. Wow. Jesus. Now look, this absolutely shit French 40-point tank has just killed a Sherman. And this is the importance of understanding the way armor penetration works in this game, and the importance of recon. So I don't think, or I certainly hope, Zagskrag did not have visibility on that Panzer 35 at the time. In fact, I think he might have done from these rifles. But he just drove that tank thinking, oh, it's 135 points, it's going to be so much better. At close range, that 4 AP gun, because it's solid shot, it has so much momentum, it'll just carry straight through the Sherman's armour. And it fired quicker, got the first shot off, and as so often happens in tank battles in Steel Division, the first shot wins. So, yeah, that was a huge value swing for Dnester here, and he's really milked a lot of value out of these, you know, ostensibly rubbish Panzer 35Rs. And now I think he's smelling blood in the water here, and just pushing through with his Ersatztruppen, and now he's sort of got across this bridge here. He can start to spread out and really put the pressure on Zagskrag. Now here's what I mentioned about this this salient in the middle that just needed like one, even like two squads of Ersatztruppen and a leader, or like one squad of Fallschirmjäger. Unfortunately, this one squad of rifles has, you know, just been poked forward, and because there's absolutely nothing here, look at the salient it's created. I think if that one squad of rifles died, he would be on +2 now and winning much more handily. So our heroic little Panzer 35's finally been taken out at the hands of the Cromwell, I think. However, the Cromwell could be in for a nasty shock if it moves any further down there. Now, because there's no recon there, I even think that those Fallshcrimjager... Wow, see, again, that HS-129 doing exactly what I said it would. You know, just coming in and popping tanks. That is a huge sort of play for the LuftLande for Phase B. Because really, obviously, they lack in the ability to field tanks. And, oh, again, another command Sherman there. Just rinsed. And, you know, look, and perfect play. He's got his air superiority, ME-109, 2 of them to cover the HS-129. And, you know, even if he'd lost that, he's got a second one here. Even if he'd lost that, it's killed enough armor that it was easily worth the trade. But in fact, he hasn't even lost it through good deployment and cover from his air superiority fighters. So some really, really tidy airborne division play here. Again, it's a little bit sloppy to let this salient exist. However, I believe this 2-star, this will be a squad of Fallschirmjäger here. I think they're obviously going to buckle this salient as soon as they move over here and make it fairly obvious where those rifles are sitting. Again, another one of these cheap Panzer 35s just coming up here, working in support of the Ersatztrupp there. Interesting that these guys are totally kind of outnumbered. Now, I wonder... it's interesting that they seem to have been cut off there. I don't know if it's because they're technically airborne that they haven't influenced the front line. But yeah, just with very clever play here, he's made some just incredibly powerful value trades with Zagskrag, where he's just been able to stop the initial push through clever deployment, exploit the fact that Zagskrag, by the very nature of his deck, had to weight his push heavily on one side, opened up a huge salient for himself over here, or even just push the line up, I should say. And now, you know, Zagskrag's looking thin on the ground, and he's got, you know, fairly capable forces all over the map. And now, you know, we can't see from his perspective, of course, but just down in the bottom left here, he's going to have a veritable panoply of lovely Luftwaffe tools that whenever he finds himself in a tough position, he can just say, do you know what? I'm just going to call in one of my airplanes to either completely waste a tank, drop some HE on enemy infantry or tanks just to stress them out. And what a comfortable position to be in, really. Now here the Sherman engaging at much more sensible distance. I believe it would outrange the Panzer 35 at that range, and of course its high armor at around 1,000 meters is just going to shrug off that Panzer 35 all day long. But again, I think one of the key failings from Zagskrag here is just that he hasn't bought enough recon all the time and didn't bring enough infantry either, you know, sort of throughout the game. You know, just this, if he'd been fighting in this section of the map from the beginning, the amount of tanks he bought would have done him a lot of favors. But because he had to push through this heavily wooded section all the way along the Odon here, he needed more infantry. You know, I think he was hoping for a really quick breakthrough, but it just wasn't given to him. His infantry was taken out, and then the tanks, without the support of the infantry, can't push through those close quarters against highly trained Fallschirmjäger troops, Panzer Abwehr, Panzerschreck teams. I'm expecting, I'm not, obviously we can't see the cooldown on refueling for the 2 HS-129s, but I'm expecting that as soon as they're available, they are going to be flying over here wasting this poor Sherman 5, and we're probably going to see some high explosive dropped on these rifles. Though that might not even necessarily be necessary, being as the Fallshcrimjager Führer and the Fallshcrimjager are here. You can see they've just taken out that one rifle team there. And the other one was bogged down with the Ersatztruppen. And that's absolutely fine because, you know, that's a sort of straight value trade because they cost 20 and the Ersatztruppen cost 10 each. Right, here we go. We've got the next round of planes entering the battlefield here, and we see leading in with the high explosive attacks, strafing runs, and then just got the Me-109s behind. And I mean, these Me-109s are visible to Zagskrag, so just sending in the one Tempest on its own there, you know, it's just begging to get a shot down basically, because no way it can win a 2-on-1 dogfight. Finally, the sort of, this is the infantry tank interaction that Zagskrag's been hoping for this whole game, where the motorized rifles are just happy to you know, engage and I suppose hold on to the Fallschirmjäger, and then the tank out here in a lovely open field where it's not threatened whatsoever can sit there and open up with its 3 machine guns and main gun, and that's where it'll see enormous value. But it's only sort of here at the latter half of the game that we're actually seeing that being able to work. And of course, as soon as it starts getting near to any of this kind of hedgerow, this building, it's going to be in a really uncomfortable spot because there are Shreks waiting and Faust waiting for it. Now, this was kind of greedy here, driving those half tracks down the road, because with the half tracks, right, they did allow the units to actually get out, but because they were hit, the units came out suppressed. It would have been better maybe to drop the rifles off here, have them advance on foot and keep the half tracks back here to use their 50 cals to just get complete fire superiority over these veteran Fallschirmjäger troops. And I think there's a great idea there as well. So the HS-129 just come back in, and again, as I predicted, that Sherman's just bitten the dust, and under pressure here from the Crusader that was brought in earlier. Always going to fly right over, as this could actually spell the end for this HS-129. It has been given the evac order, and it was too stressed by the presence of AA there to properly knock out that Sherman. But again, it got out, so the value that he's had from just one of these planes has been absolutely extraordinary. You know, it just knocked off another Sherman there. This one is, you know, presumably damaged and going to be out of the fight for a long old time. And the Panzerschreck team, they're just claiming another life of a little half track there. The right-hand side, I mean, it's just been static. That Stuart's been taken there. There was a Humber over here, I presume. Oh no, that's a plane. But the Humber's gone down, trying to push forward, and these rifles are just paralysed. So it's not even a lot of points over here, really. It's just it hasn't been addressed in the proper way. Maybe gone a bit tunnel visioned over here, when really, with all this open ground, it would have been very easy for him to hold this ground. And if he'd have perhaps held that with some of his cheaper tanks, he could have just pivoted. Cheaper tanks and AA, of course. He could have just pivoted over here and spent relatively little points to get a big gain in ground. You know, he could have surrounded this forest with tanks in this open field here and pushed around that way there, and all of his infantry units would have had to have done was just very carefully creep forward, get the German units to reveal themselves, and the tanks could have, you know, won the fight for them. But I think he's got kind of tunnel visioned on this side of the map. Again, more heavy tanks coming in, but like, what are they even there for? You know, how's that going to help? The Stug G there looks like he might have eyes on them as they approach, or maybe I think it's the Crusader. Yeah, Crusader's not going to be able to penetrate there. But unfortunately, it might mean that the Stug, yeah, the Stug's revealed itself, and the Cromwell and the Sherman are going to easily deal with it. Now, the 88 in the back there, though, the Stug's got decent armor, and we're fighting at, you know, in excess of a kilometer here. So these 10 armored units, the 10 armor to the 11 AP, there's absolutely no way they're going to penetrate that. Whereas the 15 on the flak 38 is certainly going to stress them out. That's the end of the game anyway. So that snuck up on me a little bit. It looks like Zagskrag probably GG'd out of it. But I think that was a really just encouraging show of how to play Fallshcrimjager really intelligently. I won't say Zagskrag gave him the best fight, but it was certainly a you know, fairly competent showing. But I just think Dnester dealt with it really, really effectively. And let's just have a look at the score things here. So yeah, exactly as I was saying, the points in kills, he's, you know, almost quadrupled the value out of his losses, and done so without taking a single victory point. So that's really what won him the game there. And I think Zagskrag got tunnel vision and did not take the right force composition to deal with what Dnester was throwing up. I think Zagskrag had a very kind of set idea of what he was going to be doing going into this match, and he didn't react when he actually saw the situation that met him in the game.